Excellent. So we've got Graham back by popular demand from Ethos Safety. And do you know what, Graham? I think you've summarised it perfectly there. It'll never happen to me. And I know a lot of people were watching this on the recording, and it's one of the things we always reiterate to any of the construction and trades clients that we're working with. Yes, it'll never happen to you until it does. And it's always one of these. It's like insurance, you buy it in the hope you'll never actually need it. But certainly, what we are seeing is maybe a hardening of attitudes. Maybe that's the way to put it. More of a strictness now with HSE. So maybe Graeme will dive into that a little bit. But I think one thing we can all take comfort in is the fact that it's not comfort, that's the wrong word. But one thing we've got to realise that at some point, if we are flippant with health and safety, then I think you could change that to it probably will happen to me at some point in time. So without further ado, we'll hand over to Graeme, who will probably get a balance between giving us lots of information and possibly scaring us shitless. So Graeme, over to you.
Possible. Thanks for that, Stuart. So really nice to see you both, and really nice to see you if you're watching this as a recording on the SharePoint. The statement that's up there in red, "It will never happen to me," is usually one that I hear when people come back to me and say, "You've been a wee bit overbearing with your advice. It'll never happen to me. I don't need to know this stuff. You're really just trying to feather your own nest and sell a bit more safety," which is interesting because I've never known how safety is bought. Is it bought by the pound? Is it bought by the foot? Is it bought by the yard? Is it bought by the accident? I don't know. But in reality, I've had that said to me over my 10 years of consultancy, probably, relatively recently, and also relatively regularly. So people will always say, "It'll never happen to me." But then I meet a huge number of people where it has happened to them. And what is it? Well, it is either an accident, an incident, or more frequently, the attention of the enforcing authority. And in this case, in the United Kingdom, the enforcing authority is the dreaded Health and Safety Executive, or the HSE, the beloved HSE. So I was just saying to Stuart before we come on there, very frequently people will phone me or get in touch with me or fill in one of the contact forms once the HSE have been and visited their place of work and they've left unhappy. And how do you know an HSE inspector's unhappy? Well, two things. One, he'll leave you a little chit, he'll leave you a little letter that says this is a notice of contravention. And what that means is you are in contravention of the Health and Safety at Work Act, or one of the suite of enforcing regulations that support it. And the other reason that you'll know he's unhappy is he's charged you £169 an hour, and he's charged you in 4-hour blocks. So if there was ever an indication that somebody was unhappy, it's an invoice that looks like that. So frequently that's what it is. People will actually phone and say, "I've had the HSE in my business. They've given me a notice of contravention," which is just a letter that you pay for. They've given me an improvement notice, which is a formal notice that's publicly recorded that you also pay for. Or they've given me a prohibition notice, and that is actually one of the most severe sanctions they can implement without going to court. So they've given you a prohibition notice, and that prohibition notice stands on your business and prevents you from undertaking activities until you satisfy the HSE that you've improved. And I've typically seen all three of those things over my time as a consultant. The fourth thing that I've seen less frequently but more impactful is I've seen them prosecute people. Now, typically the enforcing authority will prosecute where there's been a very serious accident, a very serious injury, or a very serious harm to somebody's health, or in some of the cases I'm involved with, there's been death. Okay, if there's death, there always will be a criminal prosecution. And when you're enforced against by the HSE, it is a criminal prosecution. Okay, it's not a civil prosecution. That typically comes afterwards in a thing that the HSE or lawyers love to call a double-headed action. So where there is a criminal prosecution, there will follow a civil prosecution. Okay. And Stuart, you had a question on that? And you're muted, Stuart, sorry.
There we go. That's better. Yes. So just a quick one here, James, when you mentioned the prosecution and whatnot. In cases, God forbid, where you do have a fatality, and I know a number of people have asked this question, can you hide behind the shield of a limited company, or are the directors liable personally for these kind of things?
So the directors, because it is a criminal prosecution, the structures that are in place around a limited company have no bearing. So they will go after the directors of the companies personally. If anybody's ever had to raise finance here, it's a bit like going PG. It's a bit like having a personal guarantor. They skip the company and they go straight to the officers of the company. So if you're listed as a director or a person with a controlling interest in a company, then that's who the HSE tend to go after. And typically, there's two things contained within that, Stuart. The first is that when the HSE prosecute you, they prosecute on a sliding scale. Okay, so they're looking for an unlimited fine. But the sliding scale is based on the turnover of the parent organisation. So if you're a multinational company, if you're a national company, or if you're a local company, it will be based on your last 3 years lodged accounts at Companies House. And the second thing, and this is where personal liability comes into it, is they would be looking for a term of imprisonment of up to 2 years, depending what the sentencing guidance followed by the court that it ends up in is. So typically that's the two things, and the limited company provides you with no protection from that whatsoever. So when it comes to HSE enforcement, that's typically what happens, is that the HSE will come round to your business and they will enforce against you. Now, one of the things that we find is that most people have got an approach to health and safety, right? And everybody watching this will already have an inbuilt approach to risk. Do you speed? Do you drink? Do you take risks in other aspects of your life? When it comes to money, when it comes to decision making, in our head, we've got a thing called the availability heuristic. And it's actually just a shortcut. And that's what heuristic is. It's a posh word for shortcut. And it means that last time I did this is what happened. Nothing bad happened, so I'll just crack on. I'll just proceed. Now, in business, we tend to not rely on that. We intend to rely on what's called a standardized approach to health and safety, or a normal approach to health and safety. And there's a really good piece of guidance called HSG 65, and it's got this thing on the left-hand side. It's called the Deming cycle. It's plan, do, check, and act. Okay, so it talks you through actually structuring your business around health and safety management. And at the heart of it is this HSG 65 process, which sets out the policies, organisations, processes, planning, and training based on the standard, but you can tailor it to your own business. So for the guys on the webinar tonight, or anybody watching afterwards, what does that look like? Well, it looks like having a policy in place, having health and safety performance targets for your business, planning safety. And we sometimes use the phrase planning for safety, the adjective there. Well, how do you do that? Well, you carry out a gap analysis and you work out where you are, where you need to be, and where the gaps are. And we call that planning for safety. So you look at where you are just now and where you want to be in compliance with the law. Where are the gaps? Where are the shortcomings? The other thing that's really important is you look at what type of business you have. And we look at risk profiling. So what do you do? How do you do it? Where do you do it? Who do you interact with? We'll talk about sectors later on, but what sector are you in? Are you in construction? Are you in services? Are you in agriculture? Are you in professional or healthcare? Are you in consultancy? What sector are you in? Well, that's part of your risk profile. Okay, and you need to think about that when you're pulling together a normal approach to health and safety, or trying to do a health and safety management system. And then we talk about the organisation. So who's in your organisation? What are their areas of responsibility? And actually name people. Make people responsible functionally for health and safety. Now, it could be your IT director. It could be somebody that's your operations manager. Who is a named individual that is responsible for health and safety? And once you've got all that set out on paper, electronically, Then you implement your plan, you bed the plan in, you generate the output, you sweat the small stuff, and that's where the act is. Okay, so you plan it, you do it, you check it, and you act. You act on your plan, and then you complete the cycle again. You go back and you make sure it's in place, you go back and make sure it's effective, you learn, you look at areas of improvement, you look at areas of opportunity, and then you just do the next thing. You just repeat, repeat, repeat. So that is a normal approach to health and safety. So what does that mean? Well, if you're a business owner and you're in the UK, you really need to think about safety every day in every activity that you carry out. And that's the basis of it. It's really no more complicated than that. If you think about safety, if you give it the priority it deserves in every day's operation, in every single activity you do, then you're doing it right. And it doesn't matter what sector you're in, and it doesn't matter what size you are. It really doesn't even matter if you're a limited company or if you've met the VAT threshold. None of this matters. What matters is you're thinking about it every day. The other thing that matters is having a system, is having safe systems of work. And the way that I typically say that people think about that is having the same result from a safety point of view every time you do the task. So standard pieces of work, same thing, same result. And Stuart, you had a question.
Yeah, just to throw in, I think it's applicable here. This is something I know a few people that couldn't attend are asking this. When you've got less than 5 employees, Graeme, does all the kind of same HSE stuff still apply? Or, when you've got less than 5 employees, do you get off the hook lightly, shall we say?
Yeah, it's really interesting because that 5-person threshold is a very commonly misunderstood threshold because it says you have to have a health and safety policy, but you do not have to have it written down. Now, that is ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous in legislative terms, right? So I have to have something, but I don't have to write it down. Well, prove that I
Where
don't.
is it then?
Where is it? Show me, show me, show me. So what will happen in practice if you're under 5 and you don't have a safety management system or indeed a policy? Even its most simplistic terms, if somebody from the HSE comes round or if you have an accident or an incident, you'll still be asked to provide the evidence that you're managing and controlling risk, controlling hazard, and have all the series of systematic approach steps in place. But you do not, by the letter of the law, have to have a document that says health and safety policy. So you're still expected to comply with the working at height regulations. You're still expected to comply with the control of vibration at work regulations. You're still expected to comply with the lifting operation and lifting equipment regulations. But I don't need a policy. Well, big whoop, you don't need a policy, right? But you still have to comply with all those regulations. I'll be honest with you, the advice that I commonly give people is just have a policy. Just write it down. Don't sweat the detail of 5 or under, 5 or over. It really doesn't matter. The law expects you to be doing all these things anyway, so just do it. The policy is actually the easy bit, so that's how that works. But typically, even if you're in a very simplistic area, you would be expected to have risk assessments that are suitable and sufficient. You would be expected to have access to competent advice, and that's either people like me or you within your own business having that competency yourself. And there's nothing to stop you going away and getting that competency, studying, doing the IOSH working safely or IOSH managing safely, or going and doing a National General Certificate or a NEBOSH as it's commonly called. But if you were looking for a consultant, then typically you would look for somebody that is a competent advisor, somebody that would be deemed competent in the eyes of the law. And that's typically the service that we sell, amongst others. In practice, you would really aim to have no enforcement notices like I alluded to from the HSE or from the local authority. Now that's important because if you're running a retail business, it's actually not the HSE that enforces against you, it's the local authority. Or if you're in a regulated waste transfer industry, if you're running a scrapyard or something like that, it's actually the Environment Agency that's the enforcing authority. But we use the umbrella term enforcing authority, and it can mean the HSE for the bulk of business, but for other businesses can also mean the local authority or the Environment Agency. And in practice, what good looks like is actually having a company with compliance and maintenance of the company's standards, their safety accreditations, or professional body or association memberships. Now, in the built environment, in construction, a lot of people use safety schemes in procurement, like CHAS, like construction line, like builder's profile. In the rail industry, it's risk RASQ. In other industries like the highway industries, it's other accreditation schemes. But they all look for the same sort of commonality of compliance. They all look for evidence of you complying with your own systems, and with your own policies and with your own procedures. And that's what we tend to do, is we tend to advise people on what those standards are and how to meet them. Ideally, what good looks like. So Stuart asked a question, or I can't remember if you asked it publicly, but I think you did it in the pre-chat chat, which was, what are the hot topics? What will an HSE inspector or an enforcing inspector always look for? Well, here they are. Okay, so the 5 things, if you have one of those HSE inspectors standing in front of you, the 5 things they will always ask, without fail, are these. They will always ask you about noise. So pretty much every process that we have within industrial settings gives rise to a noise level. They would expect you to understand what that noise level is. They would expect you to have a risk assessed it, eliminated it at source, reduced it, isolated it, controlled it, or at the end of that triangle, protected against it. Now, you'll see on the next one, PPE comes at the end of the list for both these two, and it's because it's the least effective way to control a risk. The problem with personal protective equipment, or PPE, is, and we saw this throughout the pandemic, unfortunately, from COVID, was that unless you are 100% compliant with your wearing of the personal protective equipment, whatever it would be, you're exposed to 100% of the hazard. Okay, so you have to get it right all the time, every time, or boom, here's 100% of the hazard right back in your face. And that's why PPE isn't a particularly effective control measure. But if you've got noise in your workplace, there is certain things that you can do to eliminate it or reduce it. And that's what the HSE inspectors would be looking for you to do. Same with dust. Dust is very, very prevalent, and it gives rise to a lot of systemic health hazards, particularly if you're dealing with cementitious material, anything that contains silica. The inhalation of that dust does lead to some very nasty diseases. It leads to occupational asthma, and it can lead to an occupational cancer called mesothelioma. And in some informed circles in occupational health and safety, a lot of people see silica as the new asbestos. They see it as the thing that we're tolerant of now, that in the future, in 20, 30 years, just like the pattern we saw around asbestos, that we just will not accept in any way, shape or form. So it really is one to watch out for, and it's the presence of dust. Yeah. And again, good looks like good risk assessments, eliminating it, or relying on personal protective equipment. And I've put tested there because anybody wearing tight-fitting respiratory protective equipment for dust needs to have a face fit test and needs to be clean shaven. It's a binary thing. It's that or nothing. Okay, there are ways around it for people that won't shave. One of the ways is using a thing called a PAPR, a powered air purifying respirator. That's typically a far bulkier piece of equipment, has filtration in a battery pack, a hose, delivers the air to a mask or to a hood or a helmet, and it relies on a soft curtain seal. It's positive pressure. It pumps the air in and you breathe in that filtered air. Typical cost of a mask, an FFP3 mask, and everybody knows this through the pandemic, they can be anywhere between £2 and £9. Typical cost of a powered air purifying respirator, anywhere between £400 and £900. So you can see there's a real gulf in the scale of cost there. Vibration's another one, and it's really interesting. Anybody that uses handheld tools, you're expected to understand the hazard of vibration. How much does it vibrate, and what does that mean from a hazard point of view? You might have heard of a term of HAVS, hand-arm vibration syndrome, and it's capillary or cellular damage to your hands and your extremities that means you get a thing, used to be back in the day called vibration white finger, but it's basically damage to the capillaries and the blood vessels in your hands and your arms, where you get less circulation, and it means you're far, far more prone to then other occupational disease of the circulatory systems, particularly in your extremities. Working at height, they will always ask a question at working at height, and really there's no excuse now. This needs to be something that you're absolutely on top of. If you're going out to work tomorrow and you're going to work at height, you must work at height safely. So we'll look at some stats in the next couple of slides, and in reality, the highest cause of workplace fatality is falling from height. Okay, simple as that. It's remained that, and it's remained relatively consistent. Falling from height or falling from the same level is typically the greatest killer of people in the UK. I think the slide said, and the numbers in my head because it's remained relatively flat, but there, roughly about 150 people die every year in the UK in an industrial accident, in a workplace setting. Okay, and that's remained relative. It's been 157, 159, but it's remained relatively flat. Quite a lot of those are preventable, but the majority of those where fatalities involved come from working at height. So it's something the HSE expect you to be absolutely on top of. Good risk assessment. Don't work at height if you don't have to. Use reach systems, use other systems, use technology, but please don't consider working at height as your first option. And when you've got good practice in place for working at height, such as on a MEWP or a mobile elevated work platform, you're also expected to be controlling the rescue element of that working at height. And the other thing, the last thing they'll always look for is they'll look for you either being competent yourself or having access to competent advice. So they'll look for somebody that's got an IOSH, an EBOSH, or vocational qualifications in giving health and safety advice. And that could be me or that could be you, but they will always look for the presence of training and competent advice. Now, when we say training, are you actually training people in the things that you have present in your business? So if you're working at height, are you delivering working at height training? If you're wearing tight-fitting respiratory protective equipment, are you training people to understand what the hazards are? Information, instruction and training. These are terms that the HSE use. Are you face-fit testing people as well? So that's something that HSE will always look for. Broadly speaking, they will look for a training matrix in your business that reflects the hazards you have in your business. So if you've got working at height, they expect it to pop up in your training matrix. And that's what they're looking for. And that's what good looks like. So we talked about the stats. What do the HSE's stats say? Well, they say 135 workers killed in work-related incidents in 22-23. Now, the reason I said 152 is it has been as high as 152 in the last 10 years. But that has remained relatively flat. Why is it only 2022, 2023? Well, that's actually the last reliable set of data that the HSE have. They just haven't caught up. It takes them a very long time to collate these stats. So they see 561,000 workers sustaining a workplace non-fatal injury. Okay, now there is a level above that where they see 60,000 or 60,645 people suffering an injury that's reportable under a set of regs called RIDDOR, the Reporting of Injuries, Dangerous Diseases and Occurrences Regulations. And that's typically where somebody is injured as a result of an accident and absent for 7 days, or they sustain what the HSE call a specified injury, and there's a list at the end of injury of what at the end of RIDDOR of what those injuries are. So typically breaking of a long bone in your body, no longer fingers and toes, that got taken off the RIDDOR list about 6 years ago. But in reality, if you've suffered a specified injury, or you're off for 7 days or more, you reach that higher tier of RIDDOR. So it's almost like a statistic within a statistic. So within that 561,000 people, there are 60,500 people that were RIDDOR reportable. So what does that mean to you as a business? Well, to us, within Britain, HSE estimate the cost of that is £20.7 billion. So that's the annual cost of workplace injury and new cases of ill health. Okay, and health, the clues in the title is health and safety. And they say that the annual cost of new cases of just health on its own is about £13 billion. And that's a really significant statistic. That statistic is actually on the rise, it's not falling. Okay, they also constitute mental health and losing time to mental health illness within that statistic. And they also just see 7.7 billion as a direct cost to employers. Okay, a direct cost straight to the workplace or the workplace provider of £7.7 billion. So when you look at those statistics in the round, there are some really scary numbers involved in there. But the takeaway message here is the preventability of these things. Okay, if we just take our time to look at safety every day, think about it, plan for safety, a great margin or a great bulk of these statistics could have been prevented. And it's the preventability that is the biggest crime in those numbers. It's not the cost, it's not the individual number of how many people were killed or injured. And each one of those injuries has a personal cost. Each one of those injuries has a face and a story, and people that love that person, that depend upon them. So the hidden cost there is immeasurable, right? It is so large, it's immeasurable. But in reality, safety and the accidents and incidents that arise out of non-compliance with safety has a cost. Okay? So the last bit about that, and it's quite interesting, is where does everybody's industry fit? Because everybody wants to know where they fit on a league table. It's a bit like the Top Gear, time, around the track in a reasonably fast car, isn't it? Where do I sit on the leaderboard? Well, the bulk of people that I deal with work in the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th sectors respectively. Okay, so the worst place for workplace injury in the UK to work is actually health, social care, and health services. Okay, that is the #1 industry where people have work-related ill health. But that's not the whole story. If we come down to 8, 9, 10, and 11, we're talking about agriculture, and agriculture also includes forestry and fishery. Okay, now statistically, that is the worst place to work within the United Kingdom, where you work in what we used to call the allied industries. Okay, we then have wholesale, retail trade, and what the HSE called MRV, or motor industry, or motor repair of vehicles. Now, it's actually the 9th percentile. It's a really dangerous place to work. And then we have transportation, and transportation includes shipping, it includes ports, it includes road haulage, and it includes rail haulage. And that's a pretty important statistic there, is that it's about the 10th percentile of how dangerous a place it is to work within the UK. And then the lightning rod, construction. Everybody thinks construction is the most dangerous place within the United Kingdom to work, and it's really not. It's really not. If you go and ask a sample of your friends tonight, if you go out for dinner, if you go to the pub, ask them what they think the most dangerous place in the United Kingdom to work from, an injury, just purely an injury point of view. They'll say construction, but it's actually not. It's agriculture, forestry, and fishery. And I think, if you've got any sort of knowledge of those industries, you can probably see why that is, right? You can probably see the story. Farming, forestry, and fishing, the 3 Fs, there is a 4th F, but we won't tell you what it is. The 3 Fs are typically very, very difficult industries to regulate. And they're typically industries that are familial. So there's a family aspect to it. There's a lot of untrained workers. There's a lot of young people. There's a lot of people doing jobs that are really, really dangerous, inherently dangerous, really hard to risk assess and really hard to risk manage. Fishery and agriculture are 2 that are really, really difficult. Forestry's, pulling its socks up a little bit, but agriculture, and if anybody on this call or anybody watching this is involved in agriculture, there's some brilliant guidance out there from the HSE, because they know that it's one of the industries that really needs help. Fishing, exactly the same. Really tough, really manual, really labour intensive, not very technological, really difficult conditions. Yeah, and we typically look at these industries and we look at 4 things. We look at the people, the equipment, the material, and the environment in which they're carried out. And if you look at those 4 things, Those three, the three Fs, are really difficult. Difficult for people, difficult for equipment, difficult for material, and difficult for environment. You can't think of a more difficult environment than the pitching deck in the middle of a really dark sea that's whipping up a gale. You really must think about the risk and the hazards involved in those. But everybody wants to know where they sit, and in reality, where they sit for a lot of these industries is probably the 8th, 9th, and 10th and 11th percentiles, because that's where the bulk of injury comes from. So the bulk of that is around, well, we know what good looks like and we know what the stats say. Well, what can you do? Well, the best thing you can do is actually get some help. Okay, so go and get that help yourself. Go and find out where you can control the risks within your own business. We flip back to slide 2. Do we think about safety every day? How can we think about safety every day? How can we plan for safety? How can we administer a safety management system? But in some cases, you can't do that yourself. And you might look for somebody like me to help you out. Well, the things to look for if you're looking for somebody like me is, do they appear on the Register of Occupational Health and Safety Consultants, the OSHCR it's called, the Occupational Health and Safety Consultants Register? How much should I pay? Well, it depends what size of business you are. You should never pay more than you expect to afford. A bit of a rule of thumb is some consultants will ask you what your turnover is, okay? And that's because they're trying to squeeze you into a pricing model where they know how much to charge you. To be completely transparent, we tend to charge a very small amount of money. So we charge £50 a month for competent advice. We have no minimum term. So there's no minimum subscription term where you can join us for a month or join us for 10 years. It's really up to you. And then everything else you pay as you go. So you basically pay by the hour, you pay by the mile, you pay for what you use. Just be quite wary of larger organisations, and I won't name them, but they start with a C, that will want to tie you into a 7-year deal, and they'll charge you a bronze, a silver, or a gold level. And that will be £200, £300 or £400, right? Those models are designed for the person selling the model. They're not designed for you. See if you can find a consultant that will work with your business, that will tailor their advice to what it is you do, how you do it, not how many people you employ. Now, it's a bit of a red flag. If I was buying this service for myself and somebody asked me, well, what do you turn over in a year? How many people have you got employed? The red flag would go up, because I know that they're just trying to fit me into a pricing model. So look for somebody that can give you that advice. Ideally, look for somebody that's got clients in your sector, somebody that really understands your business, and interview them. Get them on the Zoom, get them on the phone, and ask them questions. So who else do you work for? How could you help me with this particular instance? Rohit, you asked about temperature. What's the guidance on minimum and maximum temperature in the UK? Tell me what you know about that. It's your money. It's your hard-earned money, right? And it's coming off your turnover. So please interview that person. Find an expert, okay? Meet the expert. Well, I'm a expert. I'm by no means the only expert. There is a whole field of experts around there that do what I do. Find the one that fits your business. Make sure you get the right one, because that way you can form a relationship with that person. How much should I pay? Never more than you can afford. There are really effective ways of getting this service, cost-effective ways of getting this service, where you can limit the service that you pull a ticket for, and in reality just pay for what you need. Okay? The cost of getting it wrong, well, we talked about the cost of getting it wrong, but it's typically accepted that there is roughly about a 9-to-1 ratio in the cost of getting it wrong. The direct cost being £1, all the other indirect costs of lost time, lost morale, increased insurance premiums, enforcement activity, they all tend to be, in the relative term of 9-to-1. Okay, so if you directly cost £1 for the cost of an accident or an incident, then typically there'll be another £9 coming along behind it to catch you up and actually say, no, you need to pay more because you've lost time, your insurance is going to go up, you need to replace a vehicle, you need to do all of these things associated with this accident or incident that are indirect. And that's one thing you should always consider. some of the things there, best and worst. Well, what's the best industries that I see? What's the worst industries that I see? Some people ask me that. A lot of existing customers ask me that. Highly regulated industries are the best. Okay, so anybody that works anywhere around rail, around nuclear, around aviation. I've got some clients in aviation. I've got clients down at Heathrow. They tend to work in a very highly regulated sector, so they tend to be forced to be the best performers. Okay, Hinkley Point is typically lauded to be one of the best sites for health and safety within the United Kingdom. HS2 ranks somewhere below that, and then everybody else tends to fall below that. Big Tier 1 contractors, Group A contractors, the large beasts in this environment, tend to be de facto the best performers. The worst, yeah, it's hard to say, but businesses that have outgrown themselves, businesses that have scaled and not really considered health and safety. So people that are in a very congested environment doing manufacturing. Shop joinery tends to be a bad one. You know, joinery manufacturing workshops. Bakeries, surprisingly, also tends to be a bad one. And motor vehicle repair, or MVR, they tend to be on a smaller scale to a medium scale, some of the worst performers that I've ever seen. You know, I've seen some paint shops that would, you know, put the hair up on the back of your head, you know, no control of sources of ignition, loads and loads of flammable material, which they're spraying through a gun, atomizing and turning into a vapor. All you need is a spark, or in a lot of cases, a cigarette, and suddenly you've got an explosion that then leads to a fire, what they call a rolling fire or a blevy, and it becomes not a minor accident but a major accident. And those are some of the best and worst things that I've seen over my time doing this. So I suppose the time is yours, really. Is, you know, what would you like to ask me? If you've got a question that's health and safety related, now's the time. If you're watching this back on the recording, Stuart will have my details, and there'll be an email address there. You can just drop us an email to our general address, and we'll help you out. It costs nothing to email us, and if we've got some competency that we can help you with, if we can give some advice, we will answer your question within reason. Obviously, you know, I can't write your health and safety policy for nothing, but what I can do is, if you've got a burning question about health and safety, I would far rather you ask the question than just carried on, because it's the right thing to do. And in fact, it's the ethos of this business, every pun intended. It's the right thing to do is get some competent advice and ask that question. So if you guys had a question, now would be the time for it.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll go to James and Rohit in a minute. We'll just give them a couple of minutes to maybe think of what they want to ask. Very quick one before we go to James and Rohit, Graeme, is from a small kind of construction viewpoint. Has there been any recent changes in HSE that are catching people out? Is there anything sort of new that's catching people out that you've come across?
Yeah, I mean, the legislation hasn't changed and the enforcement activity hasn't changed. HSE will sometimes run various campaigns. So what I mean by that is they ran a campaign in refurbishment. So if you had a refurbishment project, if you were remodeling or refurbishing a commercial property or a domestic property even, they would concentrate on that. But one thing they have concentrated on, and I've noticed recently that have very little sense of humour on, is dust. Just dust. I recently advised an engineering company that has a lot of CNC machinery. They actually use the CNC machinery to make parts for other CNC machines up here in Scotland, and they were enforced against and now have a bill of up to £90,000 for a thing called LEV, local exhaust ventilation. And it's because they spray a metal working fluid, or an MWF, which is a liquid that is water-based coolant, that they spray within the machine to cool the workpiece and the tool. It gives rise to an aqueous mist, and if you open the doors of one of these Haas CNC machines, you're exposed to that metal working fluid. And of course, being water-based and being warm, it is an ideal opportunity for bacterial or biological growth, things like Legionella. So they now have to fit local exhaust ventilation to all of those machines at a cost of circa 90k. The expectation there from the HSE was that they should have done it before. And in an analogy, you'll understand, Stuart, if you had a large printing works, for instance, and each one of those presses or machines, it would be like fitting individual extraction or centralized extraction to that entire process or that entire line, because you cannot be exposed to that metalworking fluid. Now, they see it as vapor, they see vapor as dust, it's all the same thing in their eyes. People that are exposed to things that are systematically hazardous to their health, we see the HSE really stepping their game up and really concentrating on when it comes to industry.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Okay, we'll go to James first. James, have you got any specific questions around health and safety issues you want to ask him?
Oh yeah, I hadn't really planned any. There wasn't any particular reason why I joined this seminar, but yeah, I'm fairly small. I've reduced scale down massively again, so I've just gone back to a 3-man gang in construction doing roads and sewers, and I've been doing it for a while now, and I really can't work out how to. You know, we go underneath. We subcontract to like the main contractors, and they have all the documentation already. Like so, your Lola certificates and your daily checks and everything that you need for them. But me being a subby, I'd like to do them. But is there anywhere where you can like pull them from a database so that I've got them? So my lads, as a gang, we can keep them in the van. We can do our own daily checks, keep records of them. So when we do want to get the accreditations, we've actually got the documentation to provide the evidence and start building our own portfolio rather than somebody else's all the time.
Yeah, well, and if I understand that correctly, James, if you wish to generate that evidence just now and you want to know what format or what form to put it in, and is there a free version, happily the answer is yes, there is, and it comes from the CITB. And if you, and Stuart, I hope you don't mind me, but if you email hello@ethos-safety.com, I will send you the link to what I think is now called the GT700 series. And it is a series of editable PDF forms from the CITB that are free for you to use and access. And you can use that to generate your own daily checks, your toolbox talks, your site inspections, your plant inspections, all of that stuff. You don't have to pay a penny for it. You don't have to involve somebody like me. You can download and start to use those forms yourself. And they're structured in such a way, they're really, really usable. They will, you know, they're systematic in their nature. They're color coded. There's boxes to fill in or tick. You can do them on paper. You can do them on your phone. You can do them on your iPad. They're a brilliant resource, particularly if you're smaller in scale, because it doesn't cost you anything other than your time to use them. And I would advocate, and there's millions of pounds going into developing them from the CITB, which of course we've paid for in CITB levy. Don't you know? Let's not hide that fact. But in reality, you know, it's not altruistic, but it's really, really good content and it's free. And that's incredibly rare in this sphere. Yeah. Nobody ever gives you anything for free, but these are really good and they're free. If they just filled the form in for you, that would be the Holy Trinity, wouldn't it really? But no, you have to fill the form in, but they're really usable, really accessible. And if you drop me your details, James, I will send you the direct link to those.
Perfect. This is like the gripe that I've got. Now we're smaller now, and we want to grow. If we get the fundamentals and get into the daily habit of getting the iPad out, because we bought the iPads, we've got 3 different iPads that we've got the OneDrive, and we've got different profiles that people can use and have their own iPad. Just log it, somewhere to save it, but just need the templates for the forms to save in one place and duplicate them. Well, not have the template so you can start a fresh template every day, not have to delete everything. So yeah,
no, it's ideal. And here's the thing. Here's the takeaway from that. Then, James, you're at just the right point to start on the right path. Okay.
Yeah.
Because if you start like that now, if you embed safety into your business and the ethos and the behavior of doing it every day, then when you grow, it will become second nature in your business. But
Yeah.
here's the truth, though, and you'll never hear this from anybody else, right? Businesses that can't manage safety can't manage. Okay, so you'll get to a certain size, and if you pay no regard and no heed to safety, it will come back and it will bite you on the backside. Rail track, anybody, businesses that cannot manage safety, it will come back and haunt them. It will come back, and it has the capacity to put you out of business at whatever stage you're in your journey. So one of the things, if you set out on the right path now, you embed those policies, those procedures, and use those templates, you will grow in a sustainable, safe way, and you won't get caught out. So it's a really good question, and now is just the right time to ask it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. I mean, I've already done a NEBOSH, so I've already got the NEBOSH certificate, but I don't, being on the tools constantly, you don't get to practice being a health and safety consultant or anything like that. So having something small and managing that, just building the fundamentals up and then growing just gets better. So yeah, that'd be ideal for me.
I think the advice there, James, is, if you've got that knowledge inbuilt into yourself, give yourself permission, give yourself the license to use it, give yourself 5 minutes, walk away from the guys. Think about stuff on your walk back to the van and your walk back to the site. Think about nothing other than safety. Use that NEBOSH knowledge or that NGC knowledge that you've got. And then once you get back to your place of work, make it stick, because you're in just the right place to do it now. What
was the email? hello@ether.
Stuart will drop it in the notes. It'll be no problem. We'll drop it to you. No need to remember it. But yeah, there's a high.
I'll do it. I'll do it in the follow-ups tomorrow. I've taken a note here to make sure James gets that CIPB link, because I think that'd be useful for other people as well. Brilliant. Good one, James.
Nice one.
We'll jump over to Rohit now. Rohit, have you got any questions?
So, Graeme, I've always been told that the independent health and safety consultant should visit the site every 2 weeks or 4 weeks. Is that correct?
Short answer, no. So Rohit, the long answer is it depends. So if you had a really high hazard site where you had some really high hazard activities going on, then I would expect a regular visit. But the regularity of it depends on what's actually happening. Okay, so the other thing that it depends on is what's the competencies of the guys on site. Have you got guys with SSSTS or SMSTS qualifications on site? Have you got guys that could do what an independent health and safety advisor could do without the cost or the difficulty of getting one to site? I suspect the people that told you that were probably trying to sell you site visits, right? But in reality, it depends, Rohit. So it really depends on the level of hazard that is present on the site and what the changes are. Now, I have sites that I visit every month. I currently have a site that I visit twice a week. What's the difference? Well, the one I visit twice a week has some really deep drainage, some temporary works, some sheet piles, some trench boxes, a confined space, a 30-ton excavator, and it's a really constricted site in an urban area. And I go there every Tuesday and every Thursday, or at least twice a week, right? Because it's a really hazardous environment and it needs that level of attention. The ones I go to every month, manufacturing environments, things where the level of hazard is far more controlled and far less likely to change. So in reality, Rohit, you crack the whip. It depends. If you have the ability to look at your own site and say, this is, let's call them, basic, intermediate and advanced, or small, medium and large, however you want to cut the cake, your level of health and safety, independent audit or auditing on your own behalf should reflect those levels. And it's just the hazard that sets it, Rohit. Rohit, more hazard, more visits, less hazard, less visits.
Also, is it true that every construction company needs to have a retained health and safety consultant?
No, it's not true. You have to have access to competent advice.
Right.
Okay. Now, James has got, is it NGC 1, NGC 2 you've got, James? The National General Certificate, the NEBOSH?
In construction.
Yes.
I can't remember what number it is. I did it 2 years ago.
Okay.
And obviously, this is why I say I've like sort of done it and then used it for CRTB funding and then sort of like left it under the thing. But I know I've got the capability to just continue and grow it.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking that question is you can be your own competent advisor. So Rohit, if you skill yourself up to the level of understanding that helps you understand how to identify, control, and manage hazards, you can be your own retained consultant. So you have to have access to competent advice, but that competent advice can be you.
Point.
I'm suspecting you've got a third question, because I'd really like the third question to be no as well, because then we get the hat trick, don't we? It's like no.
I don't, but it's just things that have, I would say, over the years been sold. I mean, you mentioned the company that does a silver gold and
Yeah.
package. Yeah, we were tied into them, and then eventually had to tell them, look, just go away, because one risk assessment a year is not enough for us.
Yeah, it's perceived apathy, Rohit. But basically, what happens is at the end of the year, you tot up how much money you've spent. You know, you've maybe spent £1,200 a year. The guy's been out once. That's £1,200 a visit. You know, that's good money in anybody's book, isn't it? You know, I get that. The reason I know that is because I used to employ a consultant that had worked for them before, and I think sharp practice doesn't really cover it. But interestingly, you asked me a question just before we started about temperature, minimum and maximum, and I was keen to maybe see if I could dispel a myth around that. So minimum temperatures, very common in Scotland. So if you're in a workplace, the minimum temperature, if you're inside, is 16 degrees. Okay. If you're doing a lot of physical labour, then it's actually 13 degrees. Okay, so that's typically what it is. If you're outside, there is no minimum temperature. Now, this is where it becomes important. Outside, there is no maximum temperature for workplaces. There's actually no maximum temperature for workplaces, period. Okay, but heat is a hazard. Okay, now heat has to be considered in your risk assessment, just like you would consider the hazard of noise, dust, or vibration. So if you are getting to levels where people are suffering exhaustion, dehydration, or heat stress, you are expected to control that, irrespective of what the temperature is. So try and not think about a maximum temperature, but try and think about heat as a hazard. But the HSE's own guidance on this says inside 16 and 13, outside, or for maximums, no maximum temperature in the workplace.
Interesting.
Very.
I didn't know that. I just assumed there would be at some point there would be a maximum temperature. So that's absolutely brilliant.
Well, you can blame the media, Stuart, because every time somebody tells you it's the hottest day of the year, this question comes around, and every time somebody tells you it's the coldest day of the year, or beast from the east, or whatever salacious term we're using,
absolutely,
people tend to pull this one out for minimum. So yeah, it's a question that's asked every year. It's a question that's quite misunderstood. But if you think about heat as a hazard, then or cold or temperature as a hazard, more importantly, then you're more likely to control it appropriately.
Absolutely. Okay, good stuff. Rohit, James, any other questions before we wrap up? Any other questions, James?
No, I'm good, Stuart.
Yeah, I'm good as well.
All good. Excellent. Well, I'll see you guys in with Graeme's details anyway. So if there's something comes up tomorrow, I think, oh shit, man, I should have asked that. Then you'll have Graeme's contact details. And I see you've just put in the chat your NEBOSH certificate. So it was NEBOSH Health and Safety Management for Construction UK May 2022 spec. See, when you did that, James, how long did it take you to get that qualification?
It was 10 full days on like a day release. We could do it over 2 weeks, but I did mine 10 weeks. And then obviously we did the open book exam on the May.
Right, okay.
And then it got released. I think it took about 4 months to get the qualification in, but I passed it by the skin of my teeth, so that's why I'm not as confident as just jumping straight into it. Everybody else in my class was getting distinctions and proper flying through it. I think I got something like 47 and needed 45 to pass, but passed the pass.
Pass
I
the
got
pass,
it,
mate.
and I was happy with that. But yeah, I just want to start practicing a little bit more, so that it's just general knowledge. Like yourself, Graeme, you just talk like health and safety is just like by the by, and your conversation is just everything to do with health and safety, and that's where I want to be. I've got the want to do it, and the lads that I've got on site, I'm always dogging and saying, look, you can't be doing that. You need to do this. You need to do it like this. If I do it, I health and safety myself up. I've got the mask, got the headphones, I do everything by the by, but I want the lads to follow and then just continue that growth of being. If I walk out on site, the lads pretty much panic and go, "Oh my God, James is here. We better do what we need to be doing."
Mm-hmm.
The attitude to have, James.
There's a really good learning point there, James, as well. Is that that's an ideal point to stop the guys and say, look, this isn't anything to be worried about. But if we want to go home unharmed, uninjured, okay, this is why we look like this. So this is why we wear high visibility clothing, because if you've been in the cab of a telehandler, it's got dreadful visibility out the right-hand side where the boom is. Have you been and sat in the seat of a 360? And, as they go up in size, you can see nothing out the back of them, And in reality, if you can help people understand why you're wearing that PP or why you want them to adhere to that standard, don't be apologetic, but tug at their heartstrings. It's because you want them to go home unharmed and uninjured to the people that love them, care for them, and depend upon them, okay? Yeah. It's nothing else. This is just our work, right? Yeah. Literally, this is just what we do to earn money. So, there's so much more to life than just this. And if you can impress upon them the responsibility to actually go home unharmed, uninjured, then you're using that certificate, James, you're using your position as somebody in control of the company, but more importantly, morally, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Excellent. Love it. Good attitude to have, James. Quite rare from some of the construction businesses we deal with, so ticking the box for that. Okay, we'll wrap up at that. I will email everybody tomorrow. Make sure they've got Graeme's details so that if you get any questions, you can ping them an email. James, we'll go ahead. Thanks for joining us. We've picked a warm night. Attendance been a bit low, and huge thanks again to Graeme for coming along with your expertise. Thanks very much.
Graeme.
Pleasure as always. Thanks, guys. See you again.
Have a pleasant evening. See you later. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.